now we are ready for Q&A. So I would like invite back our interns back to the stage to take in any question and answer. I'm going to let Dan lead that. Did you want to take this? Yeah, to the floor. Go down. So if anyone who's interested in asking question, please raise your hand and mic will come next to you. So speak to the mic so that it's recorded.
I believe it was on the first slide under the dignity, tricked into something. What does that mean?
So the question on the VI SPDAT is whether they've been tricked or coerced to do anything that they didn't want to do? No, that's just the question. That's just how it's phrased.
Hi, I have a question for the Yoga for Change. On the slide showing the changes in blood pressure, mood, and stress, did you perform tests of statistical significance on that?
So which slide were you referring? Like all of the
before after comparisons.
like all the stress and mood data?
Yeah,
yes.
So your aggregate data.
Right, yes. There was significance across populations and gender.
For all of those outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it was great.
And I'm wondering also, do you have recommendations internally for other measures, other outcomes that you think would be meaningful to collect?
Hinal had some ideas on downstream outcomes.
You were suggesting at the end of the slide to add recidivism or drug abuse, or how the individual is like personally, like what they're doing, or how, like, besides the yoga session, what they do day to day. So I think that would help defining their stress level, why they're coming with the high stress and why they going with the better stress level, more to that level. Yeah.
Yes. So through this process, I got to learn a lot about data, so it was kind of cool. And we do want to check and track recidivism. We are going to be working with Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to do that. Also, increase in grade outcome in reference to children that are taking our classes versus children that are not taking our classes. We're also interested in, for substance abuse following up, and seeing what specifically they're adding into their day from our programming to ensure their sobriety and outcomes as well. But we have to figure that out first.
Another question about the statistics with regard to the blood pressure with yoga. You had there 10 sessions, and there seems to be improvement linearly across the whole thing, except sessions 7 and 8, where it seemed to regress and then go back. This was in both measures. Did you find any reason for that?
So when we got to those sessions, we had fewer individuals who took those sessions. So, we had Jim, he took 21 sessions. So we could have extended those mood and stress change levels out from 1 session to 21 sessions, but from maybe session 10 to 21, it would have just been Jim's data. So we ended up aggregating session 10 and 10 and more. So we believe that the spikes had to do with just a few outliers in those 2 sessions, but we didn't want to remove them because, obviously it still tells an important story.
Can I jump in for just a second? So that was only a section of the data from that time frame. We have a lot of note cards coming in every day, and so we only had a section of that studied data from a time period. So I just want to say we do have a retention rate, but again, that was part of our wicked problem.
So another Yoga for Change question. So was mood and something else? Yeah, stress. Did you use an objective tool to measure that, or was that self-reporting? That's the first question.
It was self-reported, yes.
Okay.
So before the class, they fill out the card, and after the class, they fill out the other portion of the card. Yeah.
And my second question was for the people that saw a decrease in hypertension, were those changes over time, or is it just immediately after a session? I guess I'm asking do you know whether those effects are lasting?
They're after one session, and they're also, there's a decrease after one session, and there's also a decrease longevity. I'm looking to them because I think that, but I don't know if that's true.
So the specific measures were taken, the blood pressure cuff and the measurements taken were done immediately before the session and immediately after the session. We have no data right now over like in the middle of the day, in the morning time. Do we see changes in their blood pressure? We'd have to get access to that data. We don't have it right at this point. That makes sense? Yeah, so the measurements were collected before and after the sessions only at this point, but we're looking to those downstream outcomes in the future.
Okay, this has to do with the Yoga for Change. It's being considered, well, that's because that's the one programmatic theme that we can follow from what you've talked about. I mean, the data is incredible. For those of you that don't know, there's an initiative that Humana has started that is called the Bold Gold, and two of the primary focuses are on mental health and diabetes. With regard to mental health, we've been talking specifically about using yoga for change. My question is, when you think programmatically about how to reach the largest populations, it's not always about getting people in groups. It's about getting people to adapt their behavior longitudinally. And so my question is, as you think about program expansion and outreach, how are you looking at ways in which people can connect from their own homes, since transportation and access can be very difficult for people to get to group activity? So just a comment.
Okay. So we are very interested in the Bold Goal, and we have spoken about that application through Mindful Moments to potentially implement our programming there. I do know a former student of mine is here right now, and he says he's been able to be sober because of implementing meditation and yoga into his everyday life. So we have that person, and that's, you know, physical data, but we also do understand the issues about obtaining classes, etc. So that's something we're really interested in, and if there's anybody here who wants to fund that, you know, we'll be open to that too.
I'd like to ask a question to the students, and I'd like people who worked on Mayo and homelessness to answer first. I want you to think back to the start of the summer, like April, to now. What surprises you the most about you? And what surprises you the most about the world? And how might your career trajectory change?
I'm the one with the microphone, so I'll kick off. Yeah, I didn't know I had the mental capacity to handle this large of a project, so that was pretty cool. You can get all the degrees in the world, but until you work with something in the real world, you don't really know what you're capable of. So that was enlightening. And I definitely want to work with data in the future. I think it drives everything. I think we kind of joke around about it. You see data everywhere now. So it's a little bit of a problem for some of us sometimes. But it gives you a way to answer questions, and that's what I've taken away from it. So it definitely is going to drive what I do in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Evan in the fact that I think this project is genius due to the collaborative approach of putting data with a real-world problem. I think a lot of the times there's so much literature and journal articles and such, and we read it and we believe it because there's data behind it, but this is something on the ground floor within nonprofits, something like immediate issues that need fixing that sometimes are ignored. So within my future, I mean, I want to be a psychologist. I want to help people. This is exactly what I want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, same here. Working with the data, solving the wicked problem, that's the most important thing for this project. She know that the stress level is decreasing in students and the mood is getting better, but to prove it, we need to show the data and the results. So I think that's doing that whole, going through the process of analysis and then showing the result. That was the main thing for this project and internship program. Yep.
So everything has just been a little bit overwhelming as far as the projects and everything at first, but actually taking this multidisciplinary approach, working with the other interns that honestly I would have never really talked to any other psychology majors or anything like that. But working with them and seeing how they handle everything, it really... like I said, I'm overwhelmed with feelings and everything. I just love the opportunity to be able to work with these people and actually tackle problems as important to the community as homelessness and overall health as well. So that's pretty much it for me. As far as career aspects later on down the line, I've always wanted to be a part of the community and give back, and now I've found the perfect way for me to do it by actually developing tools and working with data and helping drive change at the decision level. So I'm really looking forward to the future. Oh, no. I'm a nerd. I'm a computer science major.
So Dan has a saying where he's a trustee of social, a social trustee of knowledge, right? So he thinks that being that we're educated in a public university, we have an obligation to give back some of our knowledge to the community. And this project, along with some stuff that I did in his classes, really kind of elucidated that fact. And then also I want to give a shout out to the Sherpas, Jay and Kellen over there. When they would come and meet with us and we would show them our data, I mean, they just had fantastic ideas, and it was pretty amazing to see just how good they are with these programs and visualizing data. And so it makes me want to get to that level.
So we're running out of time, but we got still 4 more questions. So I'm going to pass mic to you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rogers Kane, and I work in the neighborhood. I'm on the front lines of where you guys are at. And the biggest question I have this evening is, when can we as a community of involved individuals have access to this data so that if it can help us make some decision that we can, and any level of involvement with those other individuals that are on the ground, servicing the community every day, day in and day out.
Yeah, so I think the whole goal of this project was to do just that, was to allow data to be usable. Data can be really sterile, and I think what all of our projects have accomplished is being able to allow people that are on the front lines like yourself to use that data and to use it without having to read 50 empirical articles to do so. We kind of took the brunt of learning how to use all these programs, so no one else really has to. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, there. Yeah, it's available. Sorry. Yeah, we do have a link for the dashboard for Mayo Clinic. It's going to be available to everybody in Jacksonville. So it's a public dashboard. You can go on and play with it as much as you want. It'll be linked to the DSS website.
Yeah, we'll have a link that we will share out with everyone that you can access the dashboard. It's online right now. If you're a Tableau user and you want to go to public.tableau.com, you can find us there. But we'll share a link so that you can find it. We should also say that we were very aware that some of the data that we were using dealt with people in very vulnerable positions. And so as we started drilling down to further and further neighborhoods, when we say, okay, we have a certain percentage of diabetes within this neighborhood, certain prevalence, we didn't want to know who had diabetes. We were okay with just saying, we know it's someone in this neighborhood, right? So people's health information is very private to them. So we started having those questions about how granular could we get in terms of identifying these health needs. And so we were comfortable with having that kind of neighborhood level, block group level information, as opposed to specific individuals, specific addresses of people who had diabetes. And so we dealt with those issues with the Mayo Clinic Changing Homelessness and Yoga for Change. Some of this information is private information, where it's collected from individuals about their health, about their physical well-being, and they want that information to be held private. And so any data that we have that we can aggregate and share publicly, we'll do that, but then there's some data that's protected because it's about individuals, it's about people. That's right, yes, and so we are making that available. So anyone in Jacksonville can use it.
So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for doing this project. This was amazing to watch, and thank you three for just doing what you do with your programs and your initiatives. But my question was, you three kind of answered what you want to see done next in your own programs, but what do you all want to see? You've created this amazing set of data. What do you want to see done with it? And you might not have the answer, but if you do.
I kind of just want to see what's next, what everybody else does with this data. That's really my focus.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see, and I think Mayo would really like to see this, is being able to put resources where they're needed. It saves a ton of money in the end of the day, but more importantly, it saves people, and that's the goal of this project, is to put the resources where they're needed. So that's where I'd like to see, it go. We'll go back this way.
So I guess with the Yoga for Change project, I would like to see it expanded. The Bold Goals initiative that she mentioned, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity for an organization like that.
Yeah, same with the Yoga for Change. Adding this new outcomes would really help, and see the individual, for the future, all the individuals that have been improved, and she know them by the students. So that's going to be more or major improvement in as a whole as organization, and also her goal is to create a safer community. So that's the main goal, to get there.
So I think it's really special when you find passionate people, and Lauren is very passionate. All three of them are very passionate. I worked the most with Lauren. So specifically, Changing Homelessness has decreased the veteran population of homelessness by 53%. So it's amazing. So I think the fact that we were able to find things that the HMIS might have missed in order to continually drop these numbers down is what I want to see. Like Lauren, we want to get rid of homelessness.
So thanks again, they were all great. This is for the data folks who worked on the yoga project. Was there any concern that maybe individuals showed up who had hurried to the class or run over there or been under stress before they arrived, and that caused a higher blood pressure to start? And I have a second after that.
So yeah, with this with this self-reported stress and mood level, we did have a feel statement. So what they feel at the time they came in, and what they feel at the time after they left. So some of the notes were also that I had to come here. It was like mandatory, or sometimes it's like I feel really great, more positive comments. But yeah, we do see some differency in the like how they come in and then when they leave, how differentiate their mood and stress level.
And the second one, I know a fair chunk of those individuals were incarcerated, I believe. And so this is an opportunity to not sit in a cell. Might that have resulted in them saying, I'm going to score this high just so I can get out of the cell?
Right. Well, I want to go back to your first question, actually. So with the blood pressure data, Catherine and Yoga for Change, they focus on vulnerable populations. So these are people who may, in their just daily lives, they're under a lot of stress. So I don't know the blood pressure data. I think the important thing is the change, the fact that they went from these hypertension stage 2 or stage 1 down to ideal. And then what was your second question? I'm sorry, you were saying incarcerated individuals? Right. I mean, I'm not entirely sure about the process, but I don't think that the Yoga for Change says if you don't score well on this, you won't come back.
Pick them out. No. So just like super quick, because I know we have some time, but it's all voluntary initially, but the Duval County court system actually found out about our program, and now they're sentencing individuals to our program because of the decrease in stress and increase in mood and the hypertension. So a lot of people do come in like, oh, I don't want to be here, it's yoga, guys normally, but then they feel better at the end of an hour. So initially they might not want to be there, but they feel better. And as I am aware that they are in jail, and many of them do have the misconception that they're going to come and it's going to be a female yoga teacher wearing yoga clothes, but our teachers don't show up that way. We have a uniform which is appropriate, and we are just a sort of figure showing them a yoga practice, and we get through that misconception pretty quickly by the type of yoga we teach and the way that we speak to individuals who are either sentenced or voluntary at our class.
I know still many people want to ask questions, so we're going to have one last question, and after that we will opening for network reception, so those who have questions can ask directly to the students or the client to those questions. So Carl will ask the last questions for the day.
Thank you all for doing this. This is for Rachel and for Lauren. What made you think about in the Changing Homelessness study, looking at the variables concerning dignity? Because the other variables seem pretty reasonable, and a lot of people use those, the vulnerability index, the health questions, things like that. But when you started breaking it down into the dignity, what can you kind of give us an idea of what your mindset was or what you saw that made you think about bringing out those variables in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a collaborative effort, and I will give credit to Dr. Richard and Dr. Rumapathy. So we were sitting in a conference room trying to figure out what else is going on. We read so many research articles that say there are so many certain specific reasons for why people are homeless, and this is something that is very nuanced, very novel, and we think it's very important. And then also with our collaboration with Lauren, she believes that this is something that again is very important, and that's something that the HMIS needs to have introduced.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think overall when we look at the VI SPDAC, because I know Carl, we work very closely together, we see it in a different way. So for us, it's a different assessment tool. But when we look at the actual programs and individuals that are coming into any of our shelters, what are those core things that they're looking for? We joked about it at one point during one of our meetings that it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you're really at that bottom level, what does it take to sort of reach those higher levels? So when we started working and the students really started pulling apart some of that data that they received, all aggregate, so all personal information was stripped out of it, they really took to the data and looked at where were individuals scoring the highest in those assessments, and then that sort of informed the index scale that they created their profiles off of.
Yeah, and then just one other quick thought regarding that, regarding Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it's also a very common misconception for people to believe that if you're homeless, you should be looking for a job, that kind of thing. But in actuality, this dignity index really nails down the fact that it is extremely difficult to get a job without an address.